Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. The summer of 1980 was long, hot, and boring for me. I was 18 and looking forward to going to a nightclub with my friend Steve in Birmingham. We were going to try to get into a nightclub called the Rum Runner. At that time, the Rum Runner was the place to go for a fashion scene that would become known as New Romantics. Steve and I decided to go shopping in Birmingham on a Saturday afternoon to find something to wear that night. We walked around the city center and saw a lot of post-punk kids. I liked punk style, but I scared to wear the pants and ripped t-shirts. Once, I spiked up my blonde hair with gel and dyed it red, but my mom got mad, so I had to wash it out. After that, I let my hair get very long, and it was just past my shoulders when I took this picture. We went shopping and found a store called Carn and Bell, which had the craziest clothes I had ever seen at the time. This shop was one of the few places where new romantic clothes could be bought. The clothes were a strange mix of styles from different times. For example, there was a black jacket that looked like a court jester's top with bells hanging down the sleeves, but it had red Japanese charters on it. This was typical of the crazy styles in the shop. But one thing in particular caught my eye. It was a kind of dress with a white background and big, colorful flowers and fruit on it. When I think about it now, it sounds terrible, but at the time it seemed to fit how I felt. I say it was a kind of dress because I saw a guy wearing it over black pants, and as strange as it sounds, he looked really good in it. Steve said it did look good on the guy when I told him I liked it. Then I looked at the price. It was more than I wanted to spend, but I could still pay for it. We started talking to the person working there, and I asked what it was and if I could try it on. She gave me what she thought was my size and told me it was called a tunic. I went to the back of the shop and pulled the curtain behind me to make a small room. I pulled my t-shirt over my head and took a moment to look at myself in the large mirror on one wall of the cubicle. I was very skinny, and for once, my face wasn't covered in pimples. I also noticed that my hair had fallen across my face when I took my t-shirt, making me look just like my older sister. At this time, I always wore eyeliner. My mom said it made me look too much like a girl, but it was cool for young guys to wear, which I liked as a rebellious teen. I pulled the tunic over my head and it fell down over my chest. There was a tie around my waist and another to pull the neck to gather it, but on me, the neck was open down to below my navel. I looked at myself in the mirror for a moment and thought, I don't think she gave me the right size. I tried to make the tunic look better by pulling it around. First, I pulled it down right. Then I tied the tie around my waist and pulled some of the fabric up over the tie. It started to look better, so I just left the necktie hanging. I didn't like the jeans I was wearing, so I took them off. Since I had been tanning my legs all summer, they looked better than the jeans, so I just stood there and looked at myself again in the mirror. It occurred to me again how much I looked like my sister. I stood on my toes, just like I had seen her do so many times before. I twisted my hips first one way, then the other. My hair was all messed up and covering my face, so I could only see out of one eye. Thinking about how girly I looked gave me a thrill in my stomach. I stood there for a while and felt both happy and sad at the same time. As a small child, I always had strange ideas that I would be a girl when I grew up, but I never knew what that meant. Now that I was standing here, I finally got it. Then I felt really confused, a little sick, and guilty for having these thoughts. So I got dressed and left the cubicle. Steve told him, "What took you so long?" I apologized and asked if we could leave. "What's going on? I'm just a little sick." So we left the store and went to a nearby cafe. Steve got some Cokes and we started talking. "What happened? I wish I could tell you, but if I did, you would no longer want to be my friend. What a stupid idea." I could feel tears welling up in my eyes. This had been happening a lot lately. My stomach was in knots and I couldn't stop crying. Steve put his arm around my shoulder and said, "Come on, tell me what's wrong," in a soft voice. "Well," I said, slowly, but then I stopped. Now that the tears were really coming, I put my hands over my face and sobbed. Steve gave me a little squeeze and said, Please tell me I want to help. Is there someone making you upset? No, it's me. I don't understand myself at all. How do you want to say it? I heard myself start to talk through my tears. It was almost as if I wasn't there and someone else was doing it for me. It began when I was a little boy many years ago. I just had a strong desire to feel like a girl and be like my sister. When we played dress-up games, that was the only time I was happy. I again cried. I used to enjoy playing those games. It seems so cruel, like a part of my soul has to be locked away for good. At last, I had tried to tell someone some of what was going on in my mind. Steve's arm stiffened just a little bit and then he took it off my shoulder. While he was doing that, it made me feel better, but now I felt like I'd made a big mistake. I looked at his blurry image through my tears. He stood up for a second, then sat down on the other side of me. So you're saying you like men? No, I don't at all mean that. Just that while I was trying on that tunic or dress or whatever it was, it brought up everything I've been trying to hide. So you don't like men, Steve said in a slow voice. I said in a tired voice, I don't know. Well, Steve said in a happy tone, I've got something to tell you. I looked at him and he always seemed so sure of himself. Not even a fool like me could shake him. At that moment, I realized that I kind of liked Steve because he was everything I wasn't, and in some ways I wished I could be like him. I started to wonder what he was going to say next. I do kind of like you, Steve said it in a straightforward way. I looked at him, but I couldn't understand what he said. I thought I should be careful about what I said next. I was so focused on my own problems that I hadn't even thought about the problems of my best friend. Why do you believe that? He told me, you've known for a long time. Just think about how many girls I've gone out with since we became friends. I've been asked, believe me. Steve was a good-looking guy, so it made sense that girls would want to go out with him. So, what did I say? We're friends with a lot of girls, but I don't remember you going out with anyone in the 2 years we've been friends. As I thought about it, I turned my head to one side and said, we hang out so much, I guess you never had time. No, it's because I fell in love with someone and have never been able to tell them. I looked deeply into his eyes and asked, Steve, what are you saying? I think you understand what I mean. I felt a strange mix of emotions, but happiness and satisfaction were the ones that stood out the most. I reached out and took his hand. I noticed that it was bigger than mine, so I squeezed it. I think that's how I feel too. We just sat there and looked at each other with big, silly grins on our faces, almost stunned by what we had learned that afternoon. It felt like we stayed that way for a long time. It had been a long time since I felt this good. I started to think about how I had met Steve 2 years before. I had to deal with bullies all the time because I was smaller than other boys and an easy target. When I was in art class, I worked on a project with Steve, and we got along great right away, which surprised me because Steve was so different from me. But we both liked the same kinds of music, TV shows, and movies. He told me that he was learning to play the guitar. At the same time, I was learning to play the keyboard on a Casio electronic organ that my mom had given me for Christmas. The class idiot decided to pick on me while we were working on our art project. I had just finished making a poster for our fake ad campaign when this guy came up to me, said something disgusting, and poured paint all over my work. Steve lost his mind and threw the guy across the room. The guy realized he'd made a big mistake because Steve was a big guy who liked sports and working out. I was surprised that we got along because I never liked any of those things. Steve got in trouble for what happened, but he never blamed me for it. In fact, he told me that if anyone ever picked on me again, I should tell him and he would take care of it. After a while, I could see the cafe we were in again, and I saw that someone was watching us from a table or two away. I told Steve that we should get going, and he looked at me and said that I should probably fix my eyeliner. I picked up the chrome sugar dispenser from the table and looked at myself in it. I could see black streaks running down my face. I told Steve I'd be right back and asked the woman behind the counter where the restrooms were. She looked at me for a second and then told me that the girls' restrooms are down the stairs and to the left. I almost said, I'm a boy, but I changed my mind and just said, thanks. In the small bathroom, I looked in the mirror and saw that my face was all messed up with eyeliner, and that the big black rings under my eyes made me look like a panda. I wet a piece of toilet paper from the roll and used it to gently wipe off the black eyeliner. Then I took my eyeliner out of a small cotton tie bag on my jeans belt and carefully reapplied it. After that, I used a little mascara that my sister Jane gave me when I first got interested in makeup. I spread out my eyelashes by rolling the mascara brush along them. She also gave me some lipstick she didn't like, but I hadn't tried it yet, so I figured now was a good time. It was only a few shades darker than my natural lip color, so I used it to trace the outline of my lips. Then I puckered my lips and pressed them together to spread the lipstick evenly. I then leaned forward and shook my hair out, ran my fingers through it, and fluffed it up more than I usually do. I looked at myself again in the mirror. I couldn't believe how much I looked like Jane. I've always thought my sister was very pretty. We both had heart-shaped faces with big eyes, symmetrical noses, thin necks, and small shoulders. And now, with this makeup on, I guess I looked a little bit like her. I also just realized that the lady upstairs might have thought I was a girl because I just looked so feminine. I went back up the stairs and thanked the woman once more as I walked back to Steve. When he saw me, he was shocked. "Well, you did take your time, but it paid off," he said, smiling widely. "I wanted to look good in your eyes," and smiled in return. We left the cafe holding hands, and I saw in the big mirror by the door that we looked like any other young teenage couple. As we left, we both smiled at each other in the mirror. Outside, Steve said, "Let's go back to Carn and Bell and see how you look in that dress." As he said this, he dragged out the word dress and nudged me. I think I get the joke, and it's a tunic, by the way. I made fun of the way he said dress by making the word tunic longer. When we got back to Carn and Bell, I asked one of the workers if I could try on the tunic again. She said, "Yes, but why did you leave so fast the first time?" "Sorry, but I got sick all of a sudden, and I think it was because I hadn't eaten. I do that all the time, too." I gave her a smile as she gave me the dress. Back in my cubicle, I put on the tunic and tied a bow with the waist tie. Then I pulled up the soft cotton material around the belt to fluff it out around my waist. Then I quickly looked at myself in the mirror to make sure I didn't look too stupid. I turned around, parted the curtain a little, and called Steve over. He then pulled the curtain all the way open and stood back so he could see me better. He said, "You look beautiful," as he walked back toward me and then gave me a hug. When he did that, I pulled him closer. He stood up and gave me a big smile. At this moment, my heart was skipping, hopping, and jumping, and I felt dizzy again, but in a good way. We went to pay for the tunic and then left the store. When I looked back through the window, the girl working there was smiling at us, so I gave her a quick wave. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out Patreon for a lot more content and early access to YouTube videos.